farther, I want to ask another prayer. Lord, I thank you for another opportunity to stand in your pulpit. Lord, I ask as I'm here today that I not be a hindrance or stumbling block to anyone. I ask my words be according to your will and your way and your will. Lord, I ask this in all in Jesus' name. Amen. Judges 7:8 says, so Gideon sent all the Israelites to their tents, except the 300, who took the people's provisions and their trumpets. And the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. Here we are where we left off last week. I'm going to go on to verse 12 from that same chapter. Now the Midianites, the Amalekites, and the Kedemites had settled down in the valley like a swarm of locusts, and their camels were as innumerable as the sands of the seashore. You remember in the beginning of this story, the 32,000 that were there were told, if you're scared, go home. And 22,000 of them went home. This is what they're afraid of. Camels, innumerable, like the sands. So many. God further separated the Jews until they were down to just 300. And now here the 300 are. The Amalekite camp didn't do this. They didn't whittle down their forces. They were still innumerable. And now there's just 300 in Gideon. Just 300. But God told Gideon, he said, go down to the camp. He said, go down to the camp. And the Lord sent him there, and for what reason? I know now because I've read the story. But the Lord sends him down, and Gideon's got to be wondering, what am I going down for? And he says, if you're scared, take your servant Purah with you. So he does. So what we learn from that is that Gideon was afraid. Gideon was afraid too. Just because Gideon did that thing that God told him to do, he was still afraid. He was still nervous about it, but he still did it. Verse 11 says, and I'm going back one from where I was at 12. But verse 11 says, listen to what they say, and then you will be strengthened to go to the camp. So he went with his servant to the outpost of the troops who were in the camp. And when they got to the camp, they heard the people talking. They heard the people talking. One telling another about this dream. And the Midianite was telling the other his dream. And when he did, the other one said to him, this is nothing but the sword of Gideon. And God's handed Midian over to him. Y'all think this changed Gideon? Gideon was afraid. And he goes to this place afraid. Still obedient, goes to this place afraid. And he sees that God is working. That God is working a mighty work here. Because these people, where the camels are so innumerable as the sand, these people are afraid of them. They're afraid of them. God has handed us over. That's what they believe. Well, Gideon went to this place with his servant afraid. And when he got there, what he heard changed him. He heard what they had said, and then Gideon realized that God had already won this battle. Gideon still didn't know how, but he saw that not only was God talking to him, but God was also in the ear of the Midianites. God was preparing Israel, but he was also preparing Midian. God was in Gideon's ear telling him that he had this, that he could do this. He was also in the ear of Midian, letting them know that they couldn't stand against God. And I'm going to tell y'all something. We're in both of those camps sometimes. We're in both of those camps. Sometimes God is talking, telling us to do something, and we're a little afraid, or we're worried, or we're wondering, or whatever nice words you want to put on it so you don't have to admit that you're afraid. But sometimes we're in that camp, and sometimes we're in the camp of God talking to you, saying, you're going to be defeated, you're going to be handed over. This wasn't the final thing. At any time, we can repent, and we can return to God. We can do that at any time, and take that into context as I tell you these things, because when God's telling you that you can't stand against this thing, listen to him. When God's telling you that you can't stand alone in something, listen to him. He's not condemning you. He's offering you the way out. As God says, you can't stand against Satan. That doesn't mean you give up the fight. That means you allow God to do what he's already done. So no matter which one of these camps, God is going to give you these messages sometimes. All but the most obedient. And to tell you the truth, y'all, I don't know those that are so obedient that they never doubt, that they never wonder, that they never worry if they do something. It's the strongest of us sometimes wonder, can I? And that 2 words there is where we start out wrong at, is can I? Well, the answer is probably no, you can't. No, you can't, because we can't do a lot of things. We can't do a lot of things, but you and I as children of God, we never do anything by ourselves. You know, he always does for me, takes care of me. He does these things. He's already won these battles. And Gideon is sitting there in this camp, and Gideon's going, Lord's got this. When Gideon walks out of there, does Gideon know what God's going to do? I don't know if he does or not. I kind of doubt he does. But Gideon walks out of there not knowing how God is going to solve this thing, but having faith that God's going to solve this thing. That God's going to take care of it. Y'all see all that God's doing here? And the answer to that question is no, you can't. You know, I'd like to say, can y'all see all that God's doing here? And you go, yes. And maybe we can see some, but we see just a small portion, just a small portion. The islands that stick out of the ocean, how much do you see of the island? You just see the part that's sticking out of the ocean. What's up under the water that you can't see? It's the same way with God's plan. We only see a small portion of God's plan because God has worked out so many circumstances and situations that you and I can't calculate. We can't write, we can't number. You think you can't count camels? The camels were too many to count. Try to count the blessings. Try to count the steps in God's plan. You'd be better off trying to count the sand. In our minds, we would have said that God should have outnumbered the Midianites, not sent them home. He should have called folks from elsewhere. He should have got the forces up to 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 so they could dwarf Midian and subdue them by their fear of what Gideon and God's army might do. Oh, they should just run away is what our plan would be. We just need more people. More people. But Gideon's seen something else now. Now Gideon's seen God whittle down his forces from a formidable army down to 300. And Gideon's seen the Midianite camp afraid. Gideon's seen these things. That fear that he had, God had given it over to Midian now. Imagine. Gideon, he's got to be both baffled and curious, excited and scared. He's got to be all these things. But when he was at that camp, he heard those people, and his response was to bow down and pray. I can only imagine that prayer, y'all. I like to have been standing there watching, listening, participating with him. Lord, thank you. I didn't know, Father, how he was going to do this, but I see how you did this. I see how you're going to do this. Great things he sees. I don't know how much God gave him on this final battle plan. But I can just imagine the excitement as Gideon just fell down right there and worshiped him. I think he probably fell prostrate and praised God and apologized. And apologized for doubting. I would think that Gideon just realized the depths of God's caring and his endless possibilities and his plans. And Gideon has seen God start Midian's defeat with a dream. And this dream began the downfall. Gideon, he split 300 into 3 groups, 100 in each group. Because they weren't small enough. Let's get down to 100. And y'all go over here, and y'all go over here, and y'all go over here. Each man had a trumpet and a jug and a torch inside the jug. That would hide the fire. They went as they were told, in the place that they were told. Basically, they split up kind of loosely surrounding the camp. They got to their place, and Gideon gave the command, and they all broke the jug, exposing the flaming torch inside. And they blew their trumpet. They yelled something too. They yelled a sword for Yahweh and for Gideon. Sword for God and for Gideon. And Gideon didn't need praising. But the Lord had already prepared Midian that Gideon was coming. They were afraid. They were afraid of this man that God could strengthen up. And they were afraid of the God, the Creator, who could hand them over so easily. imagine now these 300 that are surrounding this place with their jugs, and they busted because they kept the trumpets that all the 32,000 had, they kept them. So each man went down there, and I ain't reading about the sword. I'm reading about the trumpet that they had. The sword was not near as important as the trumpet, but God's going to choose how He's going to handle these things, and God's going to do it in the most unlikely way sometimes. I just can only imagine what it must have been like as they stood there with this flaming jug. I don't even know what to call it. And they bust it, and all of a sudden they stand there with torches outside the camp, and the trumpets blow, and Midian looks out there. Oh, Lord, they hear. They hear. They got to their place, and Gideon gave that command, and they yelled. Gideon didn't need what he got, but he got it. Now, even more explainable, all those camped there, all those Midianites, they turned their swords on one another. Not so much so on Gideon and the 300. Unexplainable. But then again, try to explain God's rescue in your life. I can't tell you how He did it. I can't tell you why He did it, except for to say that He loves me. Amen. He's got no limit. Our greatest imagination couldn't come up with the plan that God laid out before Him, that God gave to Midian, that Midian and the 300 executed. Our greatest imagination couldn't come up with that. Seeing Midian fall by their own swords, seeing the power and the perfect plan of God. Maybe you got a doubt in your life. Maybe you got worry and wonder in your life. Maybe you think, how could I? How could He? Maybe you think those things. I want you to imagine a flaming jug. I want you to imagine a far superior force being defeated by 300 with trumpets and flaming jugs. I want you to imagine who sent them and all of this. I want you to imagine God the Creator and His perfect plan, and His perfect planning in all that He does. I want you to do something that you don't have to imagine. I want you to know that you're His child. And He lays these plans out in your life. Perfect plans. Go where you're told to go. Do what you're told to do. Blow the trumpet when you're told, and expose the flame when you're told. Maybe you worry or wonder about His plan in your life. Maybe you can't see how He could possibly. Maybe you can't see why He would possibly. Maybe you can't see. Maybe that's a phrase you should embrace. Maybe you can't see. Because maybe you can't see. But faith lets you know. Most of the time we can't see. So we walk in faith, and we go to this place or that place knowing that God is going to be there. We go to this place or that place knowing that God has prepared that camp for my coming. Faith says that even though you can't see, you still go. The 300, they now know this. Gideon, he now knows this. You know this. Scripture said they were numbered like locusts. Those camped out there, they were numbered like locusts. We look at today's world and we say, how can we change what's going on in our community, in our country? We're just a small little congregation. It's just one little me and one little you. How can I change this? How can I? Remember you can. But you serve one that's so mighty, and He can. Remember the Midianites as they're camped down there, what God was putting into their ear, what God was telling them, how God was preparing them. And understand that is this community around us. That's this state around us. That's this country and this world around us. God is in their ear. God is in their ear, and had Gideon and the 300 not shown up, what would have happened to that camp? It have stayed standing until God sent somebody back that was going to be obedient to His word, obedient to His plan. Now I want that to be us. I want us to be first in line going. I want us to be standing there when God has His mighty victory. You know, I want to be the one He looks at and says, well done, good and faithful servant. I want to be that one. And I don't want to be the one that's over here by the rocks that are crying out praising His name. I don't want that. I don't think you want that. So God is preparing them for you. More accurately, God is preparing them for him. But your task is going. Could God have handed over the Midianite camp? Could he have handed it over without Gideon ever entering that place? Without Gideon ever surrounding, without the torch, without the trumpets? Could God have handed them over? Sure, he could have. God can do anything. He doesn't have any limit to his plan. He could have done it in the locust. Could have overtook them and pushed them out. The sun could have darkened the sky. He could have sent a pillar of flame. God could have done anything he wanted to do, but he chose the most unlikely he could by taking the 300 who drank water like a dog to go and defeat this mighty camp. Maybe you can't see. Maybe you can't understand. Nothing wrong with that. It's not needful for me to be able to see everything. I'm surely never going to understand because my ways aren't his. But faith says it's right. Faith says it's right. Having been part of his actions, having been part of his plan on other times and other smaller things, I believe that God's going to do these things for me. God's going to orchestrate this. God's going to set this in place. God's going to handle this, not for my glory, but for his. I believe that he's going to do it because I've seen him do it. Now, I might sit up there and go, really? Us the judge? Okay. Now, I'd probably be like Gideon, and maybe the Lord would have to say, well, go over there and listen to him. And you go over there and say, I think they're going to come down here and whoop us. And I get to go back all strong. That's how we felt each time. The big fall festivals. That's how we felt each time when we knew that it was going to be huge. That's how the choir felt when we got up there singing these songs that we don't know. Boy, that's how we felt when we stepped out there smiling like, I don't think we could do this. But this kid did that same thing. Do you think you can? Somebody sent me a text. Do you think we can sing this? If Miss Kimberly says we can, we can. She was our Gideon. She was standing out front and say, oh, you got this. I done seen it. So much of the world, so much of our plan, so much of this community is already in play. God is already working in their minds and their hearts. He's already sent them messages. He's already told them this thing and that. He's already prepared them. He's already done these things. He's already done these things. All they're waiting for is to see our little face. And it might not be anything more than, hey, and they just go, oh, there they are. Might not be more than that. But God might be giving you a mighty work too. He might be telling you to do something. You might be getting this time, standing up on the hill, looking over here at these people as many as locusts, camels you can't count. You might be standing up there looking, going, how in the world am I ever? You might be doing that. I've been there too. Look, God giving you things to do that no way you qualified to do. I've been there too. But walk down into it. Go down into it and hear what's going on. And hear God's plan already at work. Go into it. And the next time you stand on a hill and you overlook a task as insurmountable as a plague of locusts, you can wade out into it no problem. You can wade out into it swinging your sword. You wade out into it blowing your trumpet. With your jug of fire, you wade out into it. However God sends you, you can wade out into it. Go knowing and going, saying that I ain't sure how he's going to do this, but I can't wait to see it. That's the place we need to get to. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see how he's going to do this. A lot of times my prayer is, Lord, you're a mighty God. You're a wonderful God. You're all powerful. And I can't wait to see what you do next. Now let's get back to that place. Well, we can't wait to see what he does next. And not be afraid to be used in that thing that's unimaginable that's so far beyond our capability, that's so far beyond anything we have, anything we're qualified for. Let's get back to a place where we can be that. Nothing can stop me. Not because of me, but because of him who sent me. I'm going to ask our musicians to come forward. We're going to have a hymn of invitation. I want to tell you, there's troubles and struggles in everybody here's life. There are things that are dawning before you. There are tasks that's got to be laid out. Some of you at the top of your game, you're at your strongest, you're at your prime, and God's using you. He wants to use you. And you say, well, Lord, I just don't know if I'm the right one for that. I'm going to tell you, if God's calling you, he doesn't qualify you. Tell you, if God's sending you, he's already got the word in the ear of the camp that you'll be going to. He's already made plans. He's already performed all the miracles that will be needed for your plan to be accomplished, for his plan to be accomplished. If you've never accepted him, if you can hear the strength that he's offering to you, if you can hear the forgiveness he's offering to you, if you can hear the place in his family that he's offering to you, come down here today. If you're struggling, come down here. If you're worrying, come down here. You just want to praise his name, come down. You don't have to come here to do that. You can do that in your seat. He's sitting here with you, around you, behind you. He's outside in the cars. Those people who are listening outside, he's right beside you. He's standing at your window. He's in your back seat. And if you still ignore, he's going to go on with you. He's going to be there in that place too. You haven't missed your opportunity. I don't know how many you get, but you haven't missed it right now. Y'all, as we sing, you please come and do your business with him.
308, 308.
All hearts clear? You've been prepared for a mighty thing. I don't know what it is, but the Lord has prepared you for a mighty thing. Be on task. Be on task. Go where he sends you, knowing that the way's been prepared. It's not any harder than that. It's not any harder. Walk in faith, because he's won the battle. Walk in faith, because he laid out the plan. We're going to go out there, and they're waiting. God's been in their ear, like the Midianite camp. He's been in their ear, prepared them, telling them, them mighty people from that Quimby Baptist church is going to be around. God's going to hand us over into that church. God's going to, I don't know what God's going to do, but it's going to be something. I've been having dreams. I've been hearing what I've been talking to. I don't know how he's communicating with them, but I know he ain't leaving them alone. I know he ain't leaving you alone. Be about his business. As we go, the Lord loves you very much. And I do too.